Ole Miss is pushing for one of their best recruiting classes of all time.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into this crossover of Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss. I'm Brian Smith, joined by my good buddy Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. Thank you for making each of our pods your first listen each and every day right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. This is 100% a Ole Miss recruiting episode. We might have time at the end for a few other things. We want to ask Steven about some spring opportunities from the guys that have stood out if we get to it. But Caden Moss, Antonio Berry, Easton Royal, Miguel Whitley, Ty Keys, these are some of the prospects they're after. And while that shouldn't be shocking, they're all very good. I'm just surprised at where they're at with some of the elite kids, because in years past, their chances at an Easton Royal, who's nationally maybe a top 5 player, would have been at best minuscule. Now they might actually get somebody like that. And I have watched him run literally before my very eyes a 4.29 laser. So those are not normal players to get. I saw him do that after his sophomore year of high school. Like, it's insane. So there are a lot of different players on the board. I want to go through this, but before I do, Steven, my first question to you, you follow Ole Miss religiously. Have you seen and or heard a whole lot of different stuff this year with recruiting? But you went to the Final Four last year. What is the different buzz? Because there definitely is some, but like, what is it to you about the recruiting trail this year compared to other years where it may have been up a little bit, but it's not on this level?
No, this is definitely a next level as far as kids being interested in Ole Miss. And I think that's just because in years past, it was like, hey, we're going to do this. We hope to do this. This year is for the first time they can say, we did this. And there is no proof of concept to try and convince something are happening, because everybody saw it. That game against the Miami Hurricanes, if you're a defensive line player, if you're an offensive line player, it's like, my goodness, if I was playing on that football team, Ole Miss might have made it to the national championship game. And that's what you're recruiting, and that's how it's going. And you just pour jet fuel on everything else because there is proof of concept now.
Absolutely. And to that end, the state of Mississippi, as Stephen and I often talk about, is loaded again. One of the kids that they're after is Ty Keys. I put on for those of you watching on YouTube, on the little sidebar here, is Ty Keys RB1, meaning is he the #1 running back guy on the board? He might be. I saw him in Under Armour this past weekend in New Orleans. Seeing him on film is impressive, but seeing guys live, how much weight have they gained, how they act, all the little things. That's why you go to camps as much as anything else. I knew he could run and catch. He's a really interested kid in terms of getting all the exposure he can. He's not from an area. Poplarville is not exactly a metropolis. I think he likes the recruiting process, but he told me his 4 visits, no particular order. Ole Miss is going to get one. There's no LSU on this list. I'll come back to that in a second. Ole Miss, Alabama, Florida State, and Miami. And I asked him about LSU, and he said Kiffin hadn't offered him, which shocked me because he fits Kiffin's offense so well. So that's one less contender in the boat. I've spoken to 2 other people in addition to myself. I've heard 3 different leaders. Like, it just depends on who the kid's feeling that day. This is the kind of guy, though, that if you're in a spread offense, he's 6 foot, 200 pounds, and just completely jacked. He looks like a middleweight boxer is basically what he looks like. I would imagine that Ole Miss would love to have him. He would probably play early. They're going to lose Kewan Lacey. Who else are they going to lose after this year?
I think that's it.
Okay.
There should be maybe Joshua Dye. I think he might be his last year of eligibility, the kid that transferred from Southern Utah University.
Okay. But this is the kind of player that plays early. Now, they've gotten some of these guys in the past in state, but 2 things. Number 1, national recruit. Miami really wants him. There's a lot of NIL involved and all that. And as Steven talks about all the time, anything close to the I-10 corridor or anything remotely close to it down there, Ole Miss has never recruited it real well. It's like a different part of the country. It's weird. It's Mississippi, but those kids are as tied in to Alabama or LSU or any other school. I don't know why. Getting him would be very nice. Secondarily, if you get him, hopefully, if you look at it from Ole Miss, he's not going to Bama. That's probably the one program you just really don't want. You don't want to see them start coming back into the state of Mississippi again. It's possible, but Ole Miss is one of those schools that has a really good chance at him. And the kid can move. Like he caught the ball like a natural receiver. He would fit in really well with what Ole Miss is going to continue to do in terms of their spread offense. Next up is Miguel Whitley. This is a young man that Steven doesn't know much about, but I know him personally. I was joking around with him a little bit. He's at St. Aug in New Orleans, one of the most famous programs in the state of Louisiana, national recruit. He had an Ohio State offer as a wide receiver early. Kind of puts things in perspective. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds, really strong kid. He can really run. His visits are going to be pretty much in the South, but Ole Miss battling, like LSU really wants him. If Kiffin wants a receiver, say what you will, he knows wide receivers as well as anybody. Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, and Arkansas. That's a kid I didn't know Ole Miss had a great – I mean, he told me before they'd offered, but I really didn't expect him to get on campus for an OV. I don't know who their board is. Steven, if you want to comment on it, fire away. But, like, this is a guy that's going to play early at most schools. Again, he had an Ohio State offer early. So what do you think the situation is at wide receiver? And is there room for at least 3?
I think so. This is the same offense that they've been running, and they've been bringing in 7 wide receivers a year for the last 4 years. So I'm sure they will find room. I mean, you said St. Aug, and the first thing I can think of is Frank Wilson at that point. That's the reason that Miguel Whitley is official visiting to Oxford, Mississippi, because of the ties of Frank down in the New Orleans area. Now, it's interesting to me to see how it goes, because Ole Miss, this would be the 3rd year in the row if they can get Easton Royal, or if Miguel Whitley gets up to that point, that they've gotten a 5-star wide receiver on campus, and they're still there. Although Winston Watkins, who was once a 5-star on one of the services, went down to LSU. You have Caleb Cunningham, you have Jace Matthews. If they were to get one this cycle, that's building up a nice, healthy little wide receiving core that you can possibly turn back to. Miguel Whitley, you said he was offered by Ohio State. I'm assuming that means he's a top 50, top 30 level wide receiver, which means there's a chance that he could make that jump this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he's one of those kids, you watch him run, you watch him in one-on-ones. He beat a kid and did the flex in the one-on-one drills at the end and all that. Like, he's what it's supposed to look like. Now it's just, learning his craft and the maturity of the position and all that. But there's only so many guys that have his strength in his hands and everything. So I think Whitley's a really talented kid. Speaking of talented receivers from the state of Louisiana, when we come back, we're going to talk about Easton Royal. I have a couple of backstories on him, why NIL is so important. This is one of the more intriguing recruitments in the country, and I'll give a little bit of it away now. He's committed to Texas, but Ole Miss is one of a few schools that has a chance to possibly flip him. We're going to talk about that next right here on this crossover, Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you move with it. You always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now you can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer a spectator. You play by play. Decide with Robinhood. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the United States. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission, merchant, and swap firm. We are also brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. It is tax time, but for a lot of us, myself included, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient thing to do. Sitting in a waiting room, stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert gets you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book an appointment. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club down below. Both Steven and I participate in it. Very simple. Use code MARCH to get your free month. And on top of that, you're going to end up getting your ads on the go, whether it's Spotify, Apple, wherever you get them, for nothing at all. No ads. They're all taken out. Check out the Everydayer Club down in the description below. All right, Steven, here's my story on Easton Royal. I've known him for a little while. He was a kid that was
real quick before you do that, the NCAA just passed legislation outlawing and banning blind transfers. This would be the ghost transfers after this semester. They're trying to eliminate that. Penalties are like half of the season suspension for a head football coach.
6 games, I saw that.
Yeah, or 20% of the budget. I mean, that's a big deal, especially for a new coach that is moving in trying to supplement what is going on whenever you have a coaching change. I just wanted to put that out since
we'll get to that here in a minute, because that is I was wondering when they were going to vote on that. I talked about it numerous times, but since they can't really penalize the player because they're not employees, this is the way around it. You can go ahead and transfer, but if you play, the school is going to get hammered. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there's going to be lawyer and billable hours coming soon for somebody. That's the agents will be the ones that'll hate this the most, because when kids transfer, they usually benefit. Not always, but there's a high percentage chance. To that end, we'll come back to that here in a couple minutes, because that's a fascinating discussion. I'll explain what the shadow portal is and add on to what Steven just mentioned. So my Miguel Whitley, my Easton Royal story is as follows. National recruit. He was at Future 50 last year. It's the elite invite-only event at IMG down there in Bradenton, Florida last year. I go to the end of the runway when they do the 40s every year for this. Never know what kids are going to run. He ran a 4.29. That's the fastest 40 I've ever recorded. And he was a kid that was pushing 200 pounds then. He's about 200 now. He's really filled out. That's an elite player. Texas got his commitment early, and they offered him a pretty good NIL package and all that, but it wasn't even the highest. And he just liked it. But he's still taking visits. He told me Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas, LSU. It's the schools you would expect. But Ole Miss wasn't, like a year ago, would I have said that? No. Again, this is the same point I asked Steven about beginning of the show. It's changed. I didn't know when I asked Easton the other day at Under Armour New Orleans that Ole Miss was going to get one of those visits, and that's where it's at. I'm like, okay, now this is interesting. So that's the second guy, and another Louisiana kid. That obviously adds something to it. I don't think he really wants to go to LSU. I don't think he ever did. I don't think it has anything to do with Kiffin. He's a little different guy. He plays at Brother Martin in New Orleans. Really astute, very intelligent. He's very worldly. He could go anywhere. If he went to Oregon, he'd be fine. But not many Louisiana kids are like that. This is a young man that could end up at Ole Miss. It would not surprise me. Anything is possible. He's 5'11", and he is yoked. He's pretty much like him and Ty Keys are the same build. They are put together. That's the kind of guy you want. Again, you cannot teach speed. 4.29. Last year.
Yeah. Absolutely nuts. This is, again, another Frank Wilson type thing to where
100%.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is benefit from that. But he likes the offense. He visited before the transition and liked it, and then came back after the transition. And it's important to remember, between Pete Golding and LaDamian Washington and Frank Wilson and all of the backroom staff, there is a ton of Louisiana connections on this Ole Miss staff. So they're going to recruit that area hard. And listen to this. Okay. This is not me slamming what happened in December. This is not that. But Ole Miss fans understand with Lane Kiffin and recruiting, especially high school recruiting, he does not put an emphasis on that. There's 6 years of proof of that. Ole Miss is trying to position themselves with Damian Washington and Frank Wilson and Pete Golding as the head coach to kind of fill that void and be able to move in almost immediately into Louisiana in certain pockets. I think that is the play of what's going on with Whitley and Royal a little bit. It's just Ole Miss is just trying to position themselves to finish in the top 2 for both of these players, because we both know all you really want to do is finish in the top 2. So whenever they get upset in college, they end up at your school.
It's very possible. So in the offense, especially for these guys, with the first 3 we talked about, we're all players that are skilled. So that's straightforward. The next guy is from Tupelo. That's Antonio Berry, and he's got offers from pretty much everybody. I just want to make an evaluation on him, and it's something I've told Steven many times, and I know he agrees. He's talked about it here on this show when we've done crossovers. If Ole Miss is going to consistently take a step forward, it's not wide receiver. It's trenches. Antonio Berry is one of those guys that God only made so many guys that big that could move. He is a natural offensive tackle at the SEC level. We all know the deal there, man. They're on a ton of. Now, he's Tupelo kids that's a little closer to Mississippi State, I think, or is that
no, it's about halfway in between, because it's like that on the map.
Okay.
It's about the same distance both directions. Most of the kids from Tupelo generally, until recently, ended up down in Starkville. Now they're kind of coming towards Oxford.
Well, the difference in the programs is probably why. Yeah. But Mississippi, I hope they get better than they have been. They've been really bad. But that's a kid. I don't know where he's going to go. I didn't get a chance to interview him. But when we did one-on-ones, I kept looking down at who is this kid? There are a handful of guys that they're just different than others. He was one of them. So, again, this is another really good year in Mississippi. But at the same time, it's one thing to have a good year, but offensive tackle is different. I said yesterday on my Portal podcast, I'm like, look, quarterback recruiting is important, but I'll take offensive tackle recruiting over any other, because you can get portal quarterbacks. Offensive tackles just don't get in the portal, not good ones.
No,
very few.
People don't let them leave.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just, I don't know what the whole deal is with that. I don't care if it's a northern kid, southern kid, out west. They just don't. If you suck at offensive tackle recruiting, you're not going to playoff. It's not going to happen. So we'll see how it goes, but that's a chance. Again, that's the kind of kid that Bama wants, got a kid that Tennessee wants, etc. Ole Miss would do well to get Mr. Antonio Berry. When we come back, we'll talk about Caden Moss and the ruling that Steven talked about a moment ago. I want to ask him who he thinks is going to jump across that line and which one's going to try. So like this is going to be so dumb. There's going to be an idiot somewhere. Let's have fun and guessing who it's going to be, because it's college football. We can't ever do anything normal. We're the oddball sport. That is next right here on this crossover, Locked on the Portal and Locked on Ole Miss. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidates stumble across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'm going to be speaking with you, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing the candidates that check all the boxes. Less stress for you, less time that you're going to be spending, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get you the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Do it right now and support your show by saying you heard about us heard about Indeed through our podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right. Caden Moss is probably the number one player, I would imagine, by most people in the state of Mississippi for this cycle. If it's not the kid from Louisville, the defensive lineman, it's one of the two. And again, they're linemen. I love that kid too. He's great. I think they're both 5-star players. I watched Moss at the Under Armour event in New Orleans. I hadn't had a chance to really meet him. He was there last year. I remember seeing him like, that kid's only going to be a junior. Holy cow. He's 6'5", 320. Nicest kid you'd meet unless you got to go up against him with a helmet on. he is an earth mover. They played him at tackle in one-on-ones. I think he's okay at tackle, but I think as a guard, he's an NFL player. Checkbox. Maybe he ends up playing right tackle or something. I just don't think he's a left, but he's an NFL guy. And his offer list is grotesque. Stephen, how often does Ohio State come into the state of Mississippi to recruit somebody?
Not often.
Yeah, it's rare. He's a priority. What does that tell you? Like right off the bat, there are certain signs you're like, oh, that makes sense. So Ohio State's prioritizing. LSU and Kiffin are prioritizing. Obviously, Ole Miss is. Those are 3 visits he told me that he was going to take. He didn't have dates, but like he's a 5-star on like 24/7 arrivals or both. Those schools are probably very happy about it. And he has every other offer you could imagine. Miami, whatever, Bama, whatever you want to go through. That is the kind of player, if you can get him in addition to somebody like Antonio Berry, et cetera, then you're on that different plateau. Getting the linemen instead, they've always gotten just destroyed. The Bamas and the LSUs have always come in and taken the linemen out of the state. I'm going to be watching that very close. And I think that, well, I know Stephen will too, but I think that Ole Miss fans should definitely pay attention. They're going to get the skill kids. The offense is going to sell that. And they're actually getting some of the DBs and stuff now, which was the other bugaboo. They didn't usually get those guys. They're getting more of them. Supplementing it with the portal, Ole Miss has got a chance to be a sustained program. To that end, those are the kids that I know about that were there that were really good. There are some others, I'm sure, as well. But that list right there was a great starting point. And that's just part of them. I was just one guy there. There are probably 10 others that I need to know about as well. But Ole Miss is recruiting at a level that I have not seen them recruit at before. Not at the high school level. And like it's, again, Alabama kids, LSU, Texas, Ohio State. They're not just beating Mississippi State and Tulane for guys here. No offense to them, but this is a different deal. So, I mean, again, Steve, you want to comment on it, fire away, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's like I said, they are trying to maximize them making the Final Four in football. And
They should.
yeah, on all accounts, they are right now. Now, we're about to hit official visit season here in about a month or so. And whenever that happens, the rubber starts to meet the road because people are going to start committing June and July. And that's kind of the commitment season. How many of these 5-stars do Ole Miss get? That's the question. At one point in time, they had the record for the most 5-stars they've ever had on their campus at one time ever. And they are absolutely trying to prioritize this year, especially in high school recruiting. Pete Golding mentioned he prefers high school recruiting. He's going to do the transfer portal because that's good at filling in the holes that you might have on a roster that you couldn't get otherwise. But high school recruiting, you have 12 months to basically acclimate to college. And then you're in line to play a little bit. By that third year junior on campus, 3 years is kind of the system for development if Pete Golding wants to develop players. And that's the reason you see defensive players on Ole Miss's system. They've been around a lot. They use it to supplement, but they're trying to build through the high school recruiting ranks and making evals on that. So players like Easton Royal, Antonio Berry, Caden Moss, those guys, that's going to be important for Ole Miss moving forward.
Absolutely. And the other thing is what Stephen interjected a little bit ago. The rule, we knew this was up, and I've spoken about it on the Portal podcast ad nauseum. I'd actually looked it up today to see if there had been a ruling, so I just didn't do good timing on when I looked. But the rule, I've already got to memorize. This is hilarious. If you take a portal player that's not in the spring window, because there isn't one, the kid magically floats from one campus to another, use your own imagination. As soon as that player hits the field in any way, shape, or form, or the weight room or anything at the new destination, the following is going to happen. And this is, I don't even need to look it up. I've read this so many times. The head coach will get all of the following. This is only part 1. 6-game suspension, not allowed to be in the meeting rooms or on, like in the coaching staff meeting rooms or anything through those 6 games. He's not allowed to recruit. I mean, right there, you're done. There's like, nobody's going to do that. And then on top of it, the allotment that you get from all the money from the TV and all that, the money, the NIL that goes to players, you get a little over $20 million based on the numbers from, I don't know, 22 or whatever. About 80% goes to major football programs like an Ole Miss or Tennessee or whatever. you're going to lose 20% of that too. So give or take a $20 million, you lose 20%. That's $4 million for one player. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to do that either. The NCAA knows that employees is the key word here. Players are not employees. They can't stop them from transferring. And if they'd have tried, they'd have got sued. But players aren't the question. They're trying to keep the coaches from doing anything, and that's the other way. It's pretty smart. I'm not going to lie. Now there's somebody still going to try to sue, but you're not stopping the players from transferring. They're not stopping their education, but there is no guarantee that you are allowed to play. And that's going to be I think it's going to hold. Now, somebody else may think differently. I'm sure somebody's going to try to challenge it. Stephen, if you want to talk about it, fire away. I've got a few other comments, but I'll let you have the moment here.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think this affects schools that just changed coaches, and this will be next year. Yeah, whenever you're trying to make your roster as good as possible for a fall season, somebody that has been good in the spring transfer portal in the past of uncovering players, that's no longer an option. And I think LSU is going to suffer for this because I think they had plans for the spring regardless. Because I understand that because he was my coach for 6 years. I've seen how they operate. I think Miami is another one.
The other one. I was waiting for you to see if you could say that. That's the other one I was going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, they have had no problem. They have a player that started in their secondary that was essentially a ghost transfer last year.
He the one that started it. His name is Xavier Lucas. You're 100% correct.
And those two programs are probably going to be the biggest – I don't know, teams hurt by this. The important thing is the more of a settled roster that you have right now, the less of an opportunity, the less of going into the spring portal. I think this doesn't hurt Ole Miss because they were able to retain so many players in January. But if like your quarterback gets injured in spring or something, there's no recourse whatsoever to go. You're stuck. If your quarterback pops an ACL in summer workouts, you're done.
Here's the thing. That's the way it always was until the portal started.
Hmm.
That's why, when somebody even walked by a quarterback at a practice, you'd get yelled at. Because, there was just look, we just don't have any other options here. He has to wear the jersey, stay away from him, don't touch him, don't step on his cleats, nothing. I get it. This is back to that, even though there is a portal, because he might have been the guy you just signed in January.
Mm-hmm.
In spring practice, though, you'd rather him be holding the clipboard. It's unfortunate, but they're too expensive. So with this ruling, let me ask you a question on this subject, right in line with it. There are schools all across the country right now in the middle of spring. I know they won't admit this publicly because of what Steven said, but there are coaches saying, you know what? He can play in the spring showcase or whatever, but he's just going to do 7-on-7, and he's going to stand here with me. We're not even going to let him with the red jersey on go out there in case somebody falls into his. We can't get nobody. There's no way in hell. Quarterback play in the spring games, it's going to be terrible. They're going to let the backups play. This changes all the spring games.
Ole Miss doesn't even have a spring game.
Are they doing just a practice? Are fans allowed out?
Meet the Rebels, where you just get autographs. They're just having a meet and greet, basically. And most of spring practice, Ole Miss is doing in shorts and shirts. They're not even going to pad it up for more than probably 5 practices.
Yeah, just worried about injuries and stuff, and I get it. The only, you know what the one benefit of this is? This is hilarious. Last year, a coach from Auburn told me, I'd asked him, I said, you guys doing a spring game on TV? I was general conversation, ran into a guy. And he looked at me, and I thought he was going to eat me. He was just like, are you kidding me? I don't want these other schools seeing my players that are coming up and come after them. And that's why you didn't see all these games on ESPN and stuff, and CBS Sports Net and Peacock and all these other dumb channels they put these spring games on. Because if this holds, a few more teams might actually put this on, and especially if this holds next year, we'll see spring games again on TV because you can't steal nobody.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it might be a little late, but I'm sure ESPN's dying for content like that in the spring. They would love to have Penn State or Auburn or Ole Miss or whatever give us football. I guarantee it. Last year, there were like 2 spring games on TV. It was terrible. At least we'll get a little bit of something now.
And if this holds and there are no portal and all that, and spring games can kind of come back, it might not be the starting quarterback because you're not going to put him at risk.
Right.
But Ole Miss fans would like to see a full game of AJ Maddox and Deuce Knight going at each other.
100%.
Yeah.
Hell, I'd like to see it. I'm not even an Ole Miss fan. It doesn't matter. It's still good football to watch. I'd love to see that. Yeah, I agree, Stephen. Why not? So this year they got plans already in motion. Fair enough. But next year, if this holds, like, it'll be a lot better. And we'll have a heck of a lot more to talk about. We could do a whole episode or 2 just talking about SEC spring games. We're not going to see diddly this year because most of them have already been scheduled out and doing like what Ole Miss is doing and stuff. A little late. Okay, fair enough. Next year, heck, we might see all kinds of stuff. Deuce might be battling for the job with Maddox or whatever. That's fine. At least we'll be able to see it, and I'm all for that.
I still think, and I'll say this, whenever spring games finally come back, the FCS game that you play during the season needs to be moved to spring games. So it should be like Ole Miss and UT Martin playing in the spring.
I don't know if they'll ever do something like that, but I'd be okay with it. They could still make it a scrimmage kind of. They don't even have to do a full game. It'd be
as long as the FCS school gets their money, that's all they care about.
Yeah, I'd be down with that, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
So. All right, Stephen, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
You can check me out on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Also, sign up for the Everydayer Club. We have a very expansive newsletter that has 2 or 3 content items in it per day, links, 5 facts. It's a true, honest to goodness newsletter. Sign up for that. It is really cool. So, do that.
Appreciate it, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get Locked On Ole Miss, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, and of course, on YouTube. This has been a crossover Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal.